Understand that this particular hall was where they shot one of the popular Rajini movies. So, in case you didn't know, I came to know during the ICS when we had one of our events here. Please go ahead. Now, coming to project planning, we had a diagram worked out like this. So, basically, this is the sequence which is shown in this drawing. That is, the sequence of activities has been summarized and made into a form of a drawing. Okay, see this schedule which is made, do you know at what level it has been made? Like for what sort of activities in the project it has been made? In the last class, I told you that A could be one division, B and C probably can be the MEP works, it can be the plumbing works and stuff like that. So this network diagram is going to be common across the planning process. But what is being planned is the most important thing which we have to do. So we have the Chartered Institute of Builders, a building. Okay, this is a body which in CIOB. Okay, in 2011 they brought out this standard. So because I thought they were doing something very interesting, I was trying to hear them. Okay, now this Chartered Institute of Building has got these 5 levels of schedules. 5 levels of schedules. In fact, when you go to any big organization, they'll say, is the L1 schedule ready? Is the L2 schedule ready? Stuff like that. You will hear this L1, L2 schedules talked about a lot at the tender stage. That is, the moment a job is likely to come to you, they'll first start off with the L1 schedules. So you will have to tell the person to whom you are making a structure or a building or a factory or something bigger also how you are going to get it done. So this has been a standard. This is a standardized practice which we have. So what is this L1 schedule? L1 schedule is the highest level of scheduling. You will be making. I can hear that noise alone here. You guys are really disturbing the entire class, please. It's not nice. You can do what you want outside and come back here, both of you. I am not really worried about that part. In fact, this lecture I am making it into a video. You can watch it whenever you want. Now coming to the, I think I have to come inside the class and only take care. No need of mic or anything. I'm going to do inside. I have to take a stick, come like and take you a okay, and then have to do this. See, this sort of infrastructure, like a classroom of this sort, okay, it's not available for me. In fact, when people came to this hall, you should see the way they're looking at it. Like if I go to Singapore, how are they dropping my job? People are finding this classroom jaw dropping. It was so good. Okay, so in this space, I really expect that people don't waste their time. If you have something better, please do it. Please do it. Okay, in fact, in fact asking you, please put a proxy also. Tell your friends whose number you know. Okay, because as far as I'm concerned, those who are really interested to learn, if you ask questions, no, actually you'll be able to learn a lot. And I expect that. The one that was done. Those of you here, please feel free to ask questions to me. Please feel free to interact with me. If you want to interact with each other, you can walk out like any other people. I'm very serious. Okay? And Ambedkar Auditorium also is open for some other program. You can go there also. Okay. Coming back here, level 1 schedule, what we talk about, it is the most important or the highest degree of detail which is being compressed. The highest degree of detail is being compressed. When are you going to start the excavation? That alone will be there in the L1 schedule. Or suppose you are having a consortium of companies. Many times, most of the works cannot be done by a single contractor. Okay, do you remember the Hoover Dam which we gave as an example? That was a place where a consortium of industries joined together to do a very massive project. Okay, so they had their own way of sharing resources. In fact, for one of the projects which we are planning in Iraq, it was so huge, one company was not able to raise the capital by itself. Okay, so they needed to have a consortium of people put together so that they could raise the capital. One person's work was only to finance a part of the project. He got the lion's share of the profit. That is true. He didn't do any work, but because he made funds available, he was making money, huge profits. So what happens is like this: when you're making an L1 schedule, you will know how much money you're going to get from one party or the one of the players, or you will know when a particular activity is expected to be completed. If suppose in we also had a project in Siberia. Okay, people from our company went to design. They only designed that. You know what is the constraint? If you are careless, if you are not looking at the schedules properly, the entire area will freeze. You cannot take a ship from the harbor. If you are in the middle of the ocean, you will be covered, surrounded by ice. Your ship will not be able to move. Okay, so you can imagine then how critical certain activities are. Here the criticality was we should ensure that all the items which were supposed to be constructed reached in time. So we have to do a lot of back working. We will also have to back work when the production has to start so that it reaches in time. So this L1 schedule is like a master schedule which we get to understand how the project is going to proceed. If you look at an L1 schedule or a level 1 schedule report, you should be in a position to get confidence that the project is going to get completed. In fact, this will be one of the criteria itself in winning a project, okay, winning a tender successfully. Next is of course the L2 report. The first one is called as the executive summary. Okay, whenever you make any report, whenever you make even a tender document report, there will be a one-page report which gives almost the entire gist of the matter. Okay, so this is a pipeline project or this is an oil refinery project. The location is such and such. They won't say that there's an airport here. Those data will not come into such a report. But where is it located? How much is it going to cost the company? And how long are you going to take in this execution? What does it mean if you are investing 1,000 crores over 1 year? Do we have the resources to pump in 1,000 crores within that short 1 year period of time? So stuff like this is what is being mentioned in the L1 report. And of course, the next that's what I call as the executive summary. That's the executive summary. L2 report goes a little more into details. So this will be for the senior management. Okay, what is the difference between senior management and this top management? Usually the top management will be the absolute person who says, yes, go ahead with the project, don't go with the project. Senior management will ensure that the top management get the relevant information. So what they do, they'll have their own heads or under various verticals. Somebody is there to control the tenders. Somebody is there to control probably the mechanical part, civil works, etc., and financial part. So these people get a schedule which is having a little more detail. Okay, so usually they try to have one person to do this. This person would have a domain expertise. He will know that what are the things which should be done to get a work put in place. Now, if you please recollect your CAT 1, we had that slideshow done. Please don't talk. Those who came in late, that was an instruction which I wasted a lot of time trying to explain. I don't want people to talk. Right. Now, what happens is L2 schedule helps to understand interface between various organizations. You can just say that the building is going to get completed. Let's take this TT itself as an example. Now, when TT is being constructed, this is a 8-story building, I think. So in the 8th story, when you come to the 8th story, by then you could have completed maybe to the 4th floor. 4 levels, you could have completed all the interiors, all the furnishings, and all the other stuff which is relevant for such a building. Okay, all the relevant stuff for this building can easily be done. So in this process, what they'll do is, here they'll say to the person who's going to be in charge of the finishing, look, I'll finish my structural work on such and such date. The electrical work will be done on a particular date. So what happens, once the electrical work is done, the person who's responsible for the air conditioning, he can come in. Okay, not only the air conditioning, putting of fans and other stuff. And then after that, the person who's responsible for the finishing can come. If you do it in this particular way, you will avoid a lot of rework. For instance, the people lay road in India. After 2 weeks, who comes? The electricity board comes. They make a trench. After that, what happens? Somebody else comes and cuts the road. If suppose I'm going to put a hole, drill a hole for fixing this projector, and then I leave an ugly opening. Okay, the paint has got damaged. The paint, it means what? The paint work is repeated. Okay, so this is done by individual agencies when they are doing it as they like. It's a lack of interface. It's a lack of interface. Okay, in a big project, so many different kinds of engineers work together to get the schedule in place. So you will be, this is what we call as an interface diagram, or an interface matrix, or an interface protocol, and stuff like that. Okay, so L2 schedule has more details. It is not as vague as the first schedule, not vague, it's not very specific as the first schedule giving an overview. Here it gives a little more. It tries to understand who will come into the picture when, over and above the entire finishing schedule. Okay. The level 3 is project management schedules. Probably in a course of this nature, we are going into the project management schedule. Please remember, L1 is more like a summary, but L2 is also a project management schedule only. Here, there, what are you doing? You are scheduling major activities, like when finishing is going to be done, when electrical work is going to be done, when ventilation and other stuff is going to be done, and so on and so forth. So that is a different kind of schedule, but now we are drilling into more specific schedules. Okay, so here it will have, like, when design drawings are to be released. Okay, when this checking is to be done, when do you start procurement, and when off-site activities are to start. Like I told you that in that Siberian project, people had to take the parts well in time. So the fabrication was off-site. All the pipes, all the vessels were done off-site. They were not done in Siberia. Okay, so when these off-site activities are to be done, and what are the activities which are going to be done off-site can also be identified when you're preparing the L3 schedule. Okay, and if you are having a subcontract sort of work, the roles and responsibilities also get clearly specified. Okay, L4 schedule is section level. L4 is section level. For instance, there are two sections called civil works and structural works. What is the difference between civil work and structural work? Civil work is all the concreting work. Structural work is all the steel work. Okay, remember the lecture which we got from a campus engineer, the structural erection. When you say erecting a structure, typically it means erecting a steel frame. Okay, so here what happens is a section wise schedule is made. Earlier it was a little bigger. Now you see we are keeping on drilling down into activity level. And after this, over and above this, we have the L5 schedule at a gang level for the mason group, for the persons who are going to do the steel work, like bolting and lifting for them, for the crane operators. So like this, we are going to make a very detailed schedule. This will normally be done only in site. L5 schedule is usually made only at the site level. If you are looking at it in a design office, L5 schedules are normally not made, but if it is made, it will be like, who starts the drafting when. So when a resource is going to get allocated. So your resource allocation will be mainly from the L5 schedule. Okay. Now, basically these schedules are coming from a very broad schedule to a micro level scheduling. Okay, so L5 is the smallest or the most detailed and L1 will be the big picture. Okay. Do you have any doubt in this? Now, why did we come for this? Why did we come for explaining this L1 to L5 schedules? See, whenever you're making the network diagram, you're doing two activities. What are the two activities? You're planning and you're scheduling. Okay, so planning and scheduling are two operations which you're doing, and in practice, in practice, this is what we actually do. You will be hearing of this term L1, L2 schedules. Okay, so what it means, I hope you take it home with you. Okay, now this is the typical way by which we go. I found this flowchart in one of the textbooks, and it it is basically self-explanatory. Okay, I'll just leave it on for a couple of minutes. If you have any doubt, you can ask. You've got a five basic or very big activities to put up. Now, if you have any doubts, would you like me to explain any part? Okay, I will just come to this second part. I want to touch upon this second part a little. Okay, this this is a very key area which we have to understand. So, as when you enter the site, when you enter as a trainee or anything, there are few things which you should keep in mind. Okay, or you should try to collect. Point number one, what I feel is always remember the quantities. Always remember the quantities. What do I mean by remember the quantities? If you are going to do a concreting work, see how much you concreted, how much concrete you used. Relate it with the amount of steel which you also use. Okay, so you will get an index called index value which is very useful. It will be kg per meter cube. So for constructing footings, I use 60 kgs for every meter cube of concrete. Okay, so that is one thing. Second thing which you can actually do, or which you should also do is, you should remember the tonnage of steel which was erected to cover a particular area. Every building has a volume. Every building has a volume. So to construct this much of a closed area, then you can consume so many kgs per meter cube. The roof truss alone into so many kgs per square meter which is consumed. What is the benefit of this? Next time when they ask you to estimate how much steel is going to be there, you have the figures. Next thing is how much you have to lift is again going to come to the picture. I have a span of 15 meters. You will find that the lifting weight of individual truss is almost a constant. It is almost a constant. Okay, so you will add 15 or 25 percentage of load to that, and then you will be able to decide the capacity of the crane which is going to be used. Okay, so this is what we mean by craneage. Then materials handling, okay, like how we can safely handle a particular type of material. I'm sure you will come to understand when you get into practice. And what was the hoisting equipment or the thing which was used to lift are all there. And scaffolding, you know what scaffolding is and what are the other temporary works which you used. So when you are having these figures, you become a very powerful person in any place. When you say, for example, 10 years or 15 years of experience gives you these figures. So you should be able to relate. Yeah, like you find that the numbers are very few numbers. Like for example, the shed is going to take 5 kg per meter cube. Almost a standard. It's almost a standard. So every time, and how much your slab is going to have steel? 80 kg per square meter. It's standard. How much steel is going to be consumed by a RC frame building? One day is there without any ductile heating. If you are having ductile heating, you go up to 140 coming much higher than that, something is very wrong. So these are, and for carbon, say for example 240 kg per meter cube. So stuff like this will just come to you, and that will make you actually quite powerful. This is a summary of the various scheduling reports. Okay. Now, in the last class, I started with MS project. You remember? We started to try to put in a job. Okay. Now, the next step is, yeah, whatever we did yesterday was just putting the diagram in place. So this is straightforward diagram. However, in a construction site, we don't just draw straight line diagram. We add constraints. We add constraints. So what is a constraint? Did we talk about constraints? I don't think we talked about constraints in this class at least. So constraint means a limitation which is being placed. Constraint is a limitation which is being placed. Okay, now for instance, come back to that Siberian project which I am talking about. What would have been the constraint for the project manager? Huh? Sorry? His end date is fixed. That is the last date when he can bring the material is fixed. If he is coming 5 days ahead, what happens? He gets a float. Are you able to follow? Remember what is float? What is float? What is float? Free time. So suppose, or it's a cushion. It's a cushion which you are getting. It's actually a cushion which you get. Free time, cushion, or slack. So that's what we mean by float. Okay, there are various kinds of floats which you have already seen. Now I'm going to talk about certain feasible constraints. Okay. So first constraint is as soon as possible. This is the default constraint between two jobs. Any software by default will assign the as soon as possible constraint. What does it mean as soon as possible? You're not going to have any float in the beginning. You don't want any float in the beginning. You start at the earliest possible time. What is the earliest possible time? What is the earliest possible time? As soon as the preceding activity ends, you immediately start the next activity. That time is the earliest start time. Okay, so there is no option which is given. Okay, we call it as soon as possible. No, as late as possible. Okay, yeah. By the way, as soon as possible. Can you think of an activity which we will say in the construction field starts as soon as possible? For instance, curing should be started as soon as possible. Okay. Then, if you are starting a shift, you want the laborers to be getting to the site, to the back unit of the place where they work as soon as possible. Okay. So stuff like that you can keep on be adding to understand as soon as possible. Okay. Now, next is as late as possible. This is the reverse of the previous thing. You start the activity such that there is no float at the end of the process. So you start as late as possible. Typically, you don't try to do as late as possible as a constraint. Typically, you don't do as late as possible as a constraint. Okay. So if you do this as late as possible, the job will just try to get finished at the last. Now, how can we think of as late as possible as a constraint, or what sort of activities would you like to have with the as late as possible constraint? Opening of shuttering. Okay, because even shuttering, if you try to do as soon as possible, it is frankly good. Okay. See, for instance, painting is one activity which you try to do as go against the wall, lift one leg and put it on the wall. If you remove the leg, you will find the shoe print. Okay. This happens even by civil engineers in the most critical of construction sites. So what happens is your painting was not earlier because the activity is over, but because this fellow has ruined, even the engineer might have ruined the appearance of the wall. What do you have to do? You have to do a rework. So how do you? So this is one place where you try to do as big as another. Yeah. I tell you what, they use a commode and leave it like that. I've seen many of the residential housing. You go for the inspection, everything is going to be there. In fact, they don't only do that, they use the farm and everything and also they keep it. But I'm not, one of the other things people try to do is they try to delay payments as late as possible. Reason is, if the money is with you, what do? You get interest. It's again profit to you. So these are called flexible constraints. Okay, this means if you even suppose you don't adhere to it, you are not going to ruin the entire project schedule. Okay, but we've got an inflexible constraint. We've got some inflexible constraints. For instance, we were talking about our Siberian experience. Has to finish on such and such way. But it has to reach the site before the winter freeze. So that is a very big constraint. Okay. And all the preceding activities will be sequenced based on the finished constraint which was given. Now it is coming to must start on. Okay. So you have two ways of looking at this. So you want to have some people have a sentiment value where they say you start on this. So that's why you also have must start on constraint. Another thing is that suppose you want to finish the other one also like must end on also has the must finish on is like financial year is March 30. So you have to finish it by say 28th of March so that you can raise the bill and get the bill in 10 days. So that your year annual financial book looks nice. So there also you need such constraints. And must start on, people will also say you start from this point so that your subsequent activities are going to get finished in the way they want. Okay. So this is another constraint which I'm not able to get a very good example, but I'm sure you understand what it means. Okay. See, zero total float. Actually, it's float. Okay. So when you're not having any float, that process automatically becomes critical. So all the other activities will be based upon this activity because this will definitely be on the critical path. This activity will definitely be on the critical path. And you got expected finish. You want a job to finish on a specified date. So this we call it as expected finish. Over and above this, we have one very other interesting constraint: mandatory project finish. Suppose our prime minister is being invited for an event. Okay, your book is scheduled 6 or 8 months or even 1 year in advance. Will you be able to change the date? So you will have to mandatorily finish the project before a particular date. Another thing is, suppose you have a, see for example, I was looking at a dam project. If they don't finish the dam on the set date, if they don't finish it, they will not be able to start storing the water. They will not be able to start storing the water. Once the water starts to flow because of the melting glacier, see the amount of infusion, the amount of water which comes in will be very, very huge. So they just cannot divert the water at that point of time. They have to either divert it before the fall, or they have to wait before the thaw, or they have to wait for 1 year before they will be able to redirect the water towards the dam. Okay, so such sort of things give you a mandatory project finishing. sometimes you also have interfacing of two things. For instance, you are developing some oil wells. You are developing some oil wells. These oil wells were to be dovetailed with another metering facility and a pond also. They are developing a pond. So to ensure that oil reaches the port, we are forced to ensure that the time is rigidly maintained. The time was rigidly maintained. Okay. So you will find, in fact, in another project, we were Tata Steel has Kalinganagar as a very big steel plant. It's going to be the biggest steel complex in India. For ensuring Kalinganagar's success, we had to have iron ore reaching there. See, there was a place called Joda and Normandy. Both are very close to each other. And from both these places, they wanted to ensure that iron ore reaches the Kalinganagar plant. Suppose you're going to produce so many million tons, you need to have the raw materials. So, to ensure that the plant starts on time. If you finish your steel plant, but you don't have raw materials, you are going to make a loss. So such things also have mandatory project finish. Because if you don't finish it on that date, a huge penalty is going to get imposed on you. You will not be able to make any profit. You may even lose the entire money which you invest. Okay, so these are some of the constraints which you will put in. Okay, so what actually happens is in a project network, when you put it in place, you will start to now add these constraints. When you add constraints to a project, you will find that the sequence, okay, what gets priority, okay, changes. Your entire critical path, for instance, you're saying that one particular thing has zero float, you've given it as a constraint, or you're saying must finish on. So how are you going to backwork all these times and put it into place in your project is the challenge. Okay, this is going to be the challenge. So network diagram, yes. So as I was telling you, 15, your network can be only 5 steps. However, if you are going to put your constraint, the way you put your constraint is going to change the entire thinking process of the person who's trying to solve the network. Of course, today we are having a lot of computing support, but every time you put a constraint, we should understand what is the implication. So that's where the person's competence comes into picture. The person's competence comes into picture. So I shall stop now.